What's up, everyone? Welcome back. Welcome back. This is so crazy. This is season 4 of the Government Coins podcast. And I have to say, I am so grateful. I'm extremely grateful for all of the listeners, all of the viewers, and everyone who continuously supports this podcast. Honestly, I did not know if there was gonna be a season 4, but we kept getting so much feedback and people reaching out and asking when were we going back. So I said, all right, we'll do it again. So here we are. And today's episode is also going to be a huge kick, just a huge kickoff, because every conversation we've had, we've talked about doing contracting with government agencies and more about how to get into this space. We have a special guest today who's going to speak more about shareable contracts. So I know that is a term that we haven't used on this podcast at all. So you've definitely heard multiple award schedules and things like that. But shareable contracts, I know, your eyes are twitching a little bit right now because you want to know what that is. So we're going to get into it. But before we start talking about that, I would love to introduce our amazing guest. So Mariel Reed is the founder of Pavilion. And Mariel and I met a few years ago because we're both in the gov tech space and immediately knew there was something going to happen, but we had no idea what we were going to do together. But just continuously checked in to see how things are going, what updates, things like that. It's been a while, but I'm so excited to have her on the podcast. Mariel, would you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, no, I'm excited to be here and share more about what we've been up to. And it's been so fun to follow your journey as well. So thanks for having me. But yeah, I think my background, so I've always wanted to work on things that make people's lives better and at scale. And so I started my career working in the tech sector and at a then small startup called Coursera, focused on education technology. Joined the mayor's office from the tech world. My friends thought I was a little bit crazy doing that, but really because I was hungry to take what I had learned about building products and leveraging tech to kind of have impact at scale to the public sector. There's so much opportunity, I think, for tech and government to work better together. And living in San Francisco, I think I was a bit puzzled, like many folks coming from the tech sector, around like, wait a second, we have all this capital and we have all this talent. Where is that showing up in our public services, and how can these two worlds connect a bit better? So I joined the mayor's office. And there I got to work on talent and tech procurement. And I basically fell in love with procurement, which I know is like a weird thing to say. But I know I'm among proud public procurement nerds here. So I fell in love with procurement, and I saw an opportunity to basically use the tech experience that I had to help public servants, not just in the city and county of San Francisco, do procurement better, but actually change how procurement can happen across state and local governments in the whole country. And in particular, a really important part of why I'm doing this work and our mission at Pavilion is to engage a broader set of talent and businesses in public problem solving. I think I got to see a number of times firsthand, man, when we're able to invite businesses and individuals who have a different set of experience in, and they come up with like amazing solutions. And then, as you know, they have all kinds of trouble getting a contract, scaling their business. So there's so much opportunity, I think, to really widen participation and ultimately like see that as a really critical thing for delivery of like even better and more responsive quality government. So like our ultimate mission is to improve lives at scale by making government procurement work better. And a really important component of that is making sure we're engaging kind of like the widest set of problem solvers possible, because we think that's what produces the best outcome. So really excited, again, to be sharing more about what we're doing there, inviting greater participation and helping businesses who are maybe just getting started or curious about how to serve the public sector space, really get into it. I think I've shared this in the past, but like I would love to see in the future government contracting become even more of kind of a household thing, where it's weird if your business doesn't think about selling to the public sector. So that's a bit about me and a bit about my journey.
Wow. And I love that. I love how you mentioned making it a household name, because it's one of those conversations right now that people are still scratching their head about it, you know? So definitely making sure that that's an opportunity available. I want to hear a little bit more about how and why, or how you decided to what was it that just allowed you to come up with the idea of creating Pavilion, and basically how you transitioned from CoProcure to Pavilion?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think during my time at the City and County of San Francisco, I got to see the impact that public procurement can really have, especially when procurement works well, right? Fundamentally, it's about a matchmaking process of public servants are trying to do something to deliver a critical service or an improvement on behalf of the public. And they need to find businesses, talent, who can help support either with a product or a service or both. And so I got to see in a couple of instances when that matchmaking works, the true impact it can have, both on outcomes for residents, like ultimately on the quality of experience for residents, what it means to like work in public service, and for a business. So to walk through an example, it was taking the city and county over 300 days to get a parent who wanted to be a foster parent through the application process. And that timeline obviously is like super tangible. You can think about the kids who are waiting for foster families. They're being housed in group homes outside of their communities. The impact and the sort of trauma of that experience is very real. And so bringing that time down was something, the public servants doing the work were also really trying to figure out, like, how do we do this? How do we be more effective and spend more of our time also like on the social work and leveraging our expertise and training there, and less on like paperwork wrangling. I think they had like a 70-page Excel spreadsheet that they were like managing all of this process through. And so the program that I was part of in the mayor's office was able to identify a startup that had done work in the private adoption space, and essentially invite the startup to participate in this, in solving this challenge with the Health and Human Services Agency. And together they basically did a couple of things. They built a public website to increase the number of applications. They built kind of like a TurboTax like form for managing these applications, so helping that kind of go digital, and an internal system, a better internal system for the public servants who are doing this work to manage all of the steps in this application process. And it was just such a clear example of like, man, this was a company that wouldn't have otherwise necessarily thought to serve the public sector, but there was this great opportunity to match this talent, this creative way of doing work, and create a new category. And now that company has also gotten its start in the public sector and sells, they're in dozens of states now, because every single county has the same challenge. So that was just one of half a dozen examples that I got to see where I'm like, man, this seemingly boring administrative process of procurement actually matters so much for the speed and responsiveness of government, for these businesses that get access to this market and then can grow and do amazing things, and also for the quality of like what it is to be a public servant. And I definitely had this experience myself too, where I'm like, I'm an older millennial, but I'm still a millennial. I'm used to like shopping, doing all this stuff on my phone. It's instant, it's a few seconds. And then of course, sitting in City Hall as a public servant, you're like, I'm using email, I'm using like phone calls. Like it just feels so stuck in the 90s. And so I think it was a combination of like, man, seeing the opportunity and the value of when procurement works and it works well, just the win-win-win that is possible there. And then also just kind of this feeling of having come from the tech sector and seeing so many other industries kind of have this e-commerce experience where, it's kind of instant. There's all this information. It's incredibly user-friendly. And then this really important work, big dollars at play. And, this whole cohort of public servants trying to do, again, this really important work, spend all this money, and still stuck on like 90s technology that just felt really backwards. So I guess you could say, like, I fell in love with this problem and the opportunity at play, and saw, again, I think the combination of, like, there's a really big market here, but there's also a really unique opportunity to unlock so much impact. And that's really what I've always been looking for as well. It's just like, how do you actually make, like, what's the biggest kind of social impact thing I could think to do? And it was like, making government work better at any kind of scale, like changing a system that empowers public servants to actually deliver better government, do the work that they're trying to do. And again, from a more diverse and expansive set of businesses and minds. Like, it's been hard, but it's also been kind of a dream come true to get to work in that space and on that problem.
I think that is so rewarding to hear. Like, it's been hard, but it's also been like, it's a challenge, but it's something that I'm so excited. I'm happy that I'm still doing. Okay, so thank you so much for sharing that. I hope that inspired a lot of people out there to continue to do the work and try to get into this space as well. But now let's hop into the next phase of our conversation, which I know people are still biting their nails to hear about, is shareable contracts. So what are shareable contracts?
Yeah. So taking a step back, I was sort of in this position of, hey, there's this huge opportunity, I think, to, like, leverage technology to make procurement work even better, and to empower the folks doing the work with technology. And then there was this question of, like, what's the right starting point? And so my own journey was, like a lot of people, first I looked at, like, okay, what's this, like, RFP process, this competitive solicitation process? Seems like there's so much pain and friction in getting access to your first contract. And I spent some time there. But the more I talked to people, the more I heard about this thing, which was like, hey, what about making it easier to find the work that's already been done? Like, did you know we can actually use the work of other public agencies? So, like, shareable contracts is kind of our catch-all umbrella term for the kind of contract that a public agency can use from another public agency to make a purchase. So again, for those who may not have the full context, taking a step back, government procurement is hard because it's complicated. It's complicated because it's regulated, and those regulations require that public entities that want to spend money do so through a competitive solicitation process, right? So that's the dreaded, like, bidding process, RFP process, and ultimately that process, at the end of that process, produces a contract. And it turns out that most public agencies go ahead and meet that requirement by creating their own contracts from scratch every single time. It takes 4 to 24 months. It's a really long and expensive process. But the alternative to making a contract from scratch in order to purchase is to use a contract that some other public entity has already created through competition. So essentially, at every single level of government, these public entities are running solicitation processes, they're making new contracts, and they're essentially onboarding suppliers to do business, not just with their entity, but actually with a broader marketplace of public entities. But the problem has historically been suppliers don't know when they've won these kinds of contracts that can be shared and how to use them, and governments can't find them. So when I talk to public entities, public servants, it was everyone knew that these contracts exist. They can be called cooperative contracts or piggyback contracts. Multiple award schedules can be one of these, this category of contracts as well. So public servants know that they're out there, they exist, how to use them. But when I talk to them about, look, how are you finding these contracts? It was like, I email people in my network, I maybe call the vendor and ask, but sometimes they don't know what I'm talking about. Or I go onto, like, I open 6 tabs and I'm checking, like, my state website, I'm checking, like, a few other local entity websites, et cetera. So folks were looking for these contracts already on the buyer side and didn't have a place to go to find them. So a shareable contract essentially is any contract that's been created through a formal competitive process that qualifies a supplier within a set of terms, like with a given scope for a set duration, to sell those products or services to multiple entities. And the incredible thing is, many businesses out there actually have already won these kinds of contracts and just don't know it. So our product is building one place to go where buyers can find and purchase off of these contracts created by public entities across the country in one place, and where suppliers can sell more using the contracts that they've already won instead of having to go through a new process from scratch. So that's really what Pavilion is. You can think of it as like all the contracts, from your local agencies, states, the federal government, national purchasing cooperatives, all kind of under one roof. And again, our ultimate goal there is to bring down the costs of buying and selling in the public sector, expand participation, and help public agencies deliver better and faster services.
Got it. And I love the fact that you brought that up. Someone did have a question in the chat, so I'm going to get to that question.
Oh,
but
great.
Just before we get to that, you mentioned that sometimes business owners don't know if they've won these type of contracts. That right there is the key part, because even as a business owner, you could be marketing your services to another agency, the agency down the street, the agency a few miles up the road. So I love that you said that. And how would a business find out if they have a contract that they can, essentially allow other agencies to piggyback off of?
Yeah, no, this is one of the most exciting things, because I know oftentimes like folks also ask the question sometimes around like, hey, isn't helping people who've already won business like limiting competition? Like, how does that support like expanding participation in the sector? And there are 3 really important things at play. First is, if all of a sudden participating in a competitive bidding process allows you to win a contract that you can use to enter a market, that changes your cost of customer acquisition. And by dramatically lowering that cost of acquisition, we think we can entice more people to look at the process and be like, oh, it's worth going through that first RFP process, because look at the opportunity that's on the other end. It's not so expensive. It's not so impossible to actually grow my business in government. The second thing is what you just mentioned, which is like, actually, there's such a big universe of businesses that have already been pre-qualified to sell using these contracts. And especially as we unlock more data from local public agencies, we're just seeing like a plethora of new kinds of businesses, especially the more small, diverse businesses that provide like services, locally relevant services. So I don't know if you can see my shirt, but I'm wearing like tree trimming and like sign language interpretation and like a bunch of things that you can find on the platform. And oftentimes it is small and diverse businesses that are qualified. But like you said, they don't realize that they've gone through this RFP process and that the contract that they've been awarded actually includes this opportunity to sell to others. So they're missing out on the opportunity to grow their business using the contract that they've already won. We have a checklist on our and some resources on our website. So I'll share kind of at a high level, but if folks are curious, I can also share with you the links after this for those more
And
detailed
I can go
resources.
and grab them now as well.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. But essentially, you should do first an inventory of the contracts you've already been awarded, because every time you've responded to and won a competitively solicited contract, you may have been awarded a contract that you can use to sell into the broader the broader government market. And so what you want to look for is, was the contract competitively solicited, right? So were you part of a competitive bidding process? Was there a solicitation, a bid document that went out where there was competition and evidence of competition? Then you want to take a look at the expiration date and make sure that that contract is still current. So public agencies can't piggyback on a contract that's already expired. That contract needs to still be active. And then the third thing is most, but not all, most public entities require what is called like piggyback language or cooperative language in the contract documents in order to be able to leverage that contract. And this can take a number of different forms. And again, I can share an article with you that has some examples, but essentially it can be known as like a cooperative use, other governmental agency use, piggyback clause, but there's some language typically in the terms and conditions that says, hey, other public entities can leverage this contract, if the vendor agrees. And then the fourth thing to think about, and especially for smaller businesses, is what's the scope? What's the sort of menu of services and the pricing arrangement that you've set up? So this is something to think about as you're participating in the RFP process as well, is if you think about every contract that you win as an opportunity to win a contract that you can use to sell to other governments, you want to think about like, would I actually want to sell off of this contract to other entities? And so thinking about what kind of pricing you provide, and recognizing like, would you want to honor that pricing for other public entities? How do you set up kind of a menu of services or menu of prices that make sense and might be sort of adjustable, whether that's like a super big urban customer or maybe a more rural, smaller client? You can always discount off of the pricing additionally, but you can't go up. So that's another place where folks sometimes get stuck, where it's like, oh man, shoot, I didn't realize that I could use this, like, I don't know, City of Boston contract to sell to another public entity. But oh man, I gave them such a steep discount. I don't know if I can actually afford to sell to a smaller public entity on these terms. So that's one other thing to just consider, is looking at the contracts and as you're responding to business, thinking about, okay, how do we actually provide a menu, provide a pricing response that we could use as a business to not only serve this customer, but actually a broader set of customers. So that's essentially what you're looking for. And like I said, some public entities like City of LA, a number of local entities in Kansas don't actually even need that cooperative language. As long as it's been competitively solicited, they're oftentimes able to leverage a contract. So there's a wide world out there of being able to use those contracts you've already won to sell the products or services that you've been qualified by some other public entity to sell.
Okay, so that was a really good checklist. And I know someone just said, basically, you already answered the question that they had in the chat. So that was perfect. But I went ahead and I dropped the link in there to the checklist as well. So that way, if you are watching this on YouTube, you can go ahead and check out the link to Pavilion's article about shareable contracts and how do you know if you have won a contract like that. The next question that I wanted to ask was, okay, let's say we went through the checklist, we went to the website, we checked out the checklist, and we did realize, oh man, we have a contract that we can take to another agency to basically share this contract. What are some tips that you would give for a small business on how to leverage this contract, how to leverage this shareable contract?
Yeah, totally. So a couple of things. One is understanding who your customer is and the role that procurement plays in the organization is important, right? So most businesses out there are not actually selling to procurement, right? You're doing landscaping or like on my shirt, sign language interpretation or whatever it is, and you're selling to an end user, a public servant in government who needs your products or your services. So, so I would say like you shouldn't immediately call up the procurement team or department and try to be like, hey, I have a shareable contract, like please buy my services, because they're not really your customer. So I would say still focus on your customer, but you should be leveraging and flagging in your conversations with your customers that you have this procurement vehicle, this contracting vehicle available, because essentially it strengthens your pitch to those customers when all of a sudden the ask on your customers isn't, hey, can you put out an RFP process or a bidding process that they're going to have to kind of shepherd. They know it's going to take a really long time. There's a buy it now option available that they can use to take to their procurement team and evaluate. So that's one thing, is like it should change. This should be reflected in your pitch, not to the procurement department. So it's don't start pitching procurement teams all of a sudden if they're not your customer, but in your conversations with your customers, because having that buy it now option, being able to support your customer in their internal conversations with procurement can go a long way. So that's the first thing. The second thing is make sure you've added your contract documents and information about your business to our platform. So there's no cost to be listed. In the future, we do plan to assess a fee when we help you win new business, but we're not doing that now. So it's a great opportunity to really get started and help us help you make your business more visible and accessible. Basically, like we have thousands of public entities that visit our platform every single month that are running searches, and our ability to match those high intent buyers with information about suppliers that have these kinds of contracts, that's our bread and butter. So we can help you also increase your visibility and at least have the opportunity to sell. So those are kind of the two things. And then I think the third one is just as you continue to apply, to new solicitations, to new bids, make sure you're taking a look at that language. And if it's not there, you can always ask the public entity, hey, can you put it in? And again, think carefully about, hey, what's the scope here? What's the menu of services and the pricing that I want to offer, so that if I do win this business, I could think about extending this opportunity or this, these services to other types of public entity customers, and I would feel excited about it for my business.
Got it. So that's a good point. You can also ask to add that piggybacking information into the contract. That is such a key point as well, because that's a huge area to get started. For everyone who, like I said, is on the YouTube channel, I've already added the link to Pavilion's website for you to go in and create your supplier profile and start uploading those contracts, especially if you already have a matchmaker who is going to be connecting you with other agencies to do business. So just because I'm up here talking about this, could you tell us a little bit more about the process for a small business creating an account in Pavilion?
Yeah. In fact, many businesses will go in and discover that we already have information about their business there. So it's a matter of making sure that your contact information is up to date and accurate, so that when we do have new business for you, we know the right folks to send to. You wouldn't believe the number of times it's quite tragic, where like not the right contact info means a really valuable lead, like many hundreds of thousands of dollars, gets passed around or kind of like sits there. So make sure that contact info is up to date. And then there's an opportunity also to give us additional information about your business, around, hey, what geographies do you serve? Are you interested in growing your business regionally? Are you open or available to sell across the country? And then additional information about what products and services are confirmed to be within the scope of a contract. Sometimes it's really straightforward. If you do fence repair, it's telling us, hey, can you do iron? Can you do chain link fencing? It's adding in some of those additional keywords that might be part of the scope of that contract. For other types of contracts, especially the sort of discount off lists or catalogs, it can be a much larger set of keywords that's helpful for us to make sure, again, your business is visible. So it's really simple. It's a matter of verifying that you're related to the business, and then opportunistically adding in additional information about the business as well. One thing I actually also will add is if you are a small business or a minority owned or otherwise diverse business, and you have won a credential, your business has a credential from a state or federal agency or even a local agency, we actually just launched a new feature this week that pulls those credentials directly from the state and federal sources. So one pain point for suppliers can oftentimes be like, man, I spent all this time getting this credential. I'm official now. I'm a women-owned business. I'm a minority-owned business, and oftentimes the places where those credentials live, the information about those credentials live, and the information on shareable contracts live, and procurement information is unfortunately separate. So it can be a lot of work as a supplier to like both be like, hey, we have a shareable contract and we have this credential, and let me point you to like a dozen different links so you can verify all this information or send it all via email. And again, the theme of what we're building is the information that public buyers need all in one place. So if you do have a business credential, hopefully we already have it there. We're continuing to add more of these certifying entities, the data into the platform all the time. But I know we just launched this week for Oregon, Arizona, Texas, and California, all the statewide credentials, and we'll be expanding that list as well. So if you have a certification and it's not in there too, let us know, because that certification can be working for you. We do see buyers go in and filter and try to find, hey, I want a shareable contract, but I'd like to prioritize a diverse business.
Oh, huge kudos for that that feature, that additional feature. That's something that has definitely been near and dear to the start of GovLia and the reason that we started doing this work anyway. The podcast was just a bonus. I had to tell people the other day, I'm like, GovLia is a technology company. It's a software company. We just so happen to do all this other stuff. So, but definitely excited and happy to have you here. Yeah, definitely. We have a few people say this is good to know, nice information, very informative. Thank you. So this has been a really good episode. Mariel, I did want to see if you have any additional information for businesses that you would like to share, whether it's based on the work that you do or your journey as an entrepreneur as well. So any final thoughts?
Yeah, well, I know you know this to be true too, but like it's hard work. It is for so many people a labor of love. And sometimes it feels almost illogical to be doing it. I think the biggest thing is like just keep going. And there are folks out there, ourselves included, that are really excited about trying to figure out how to make it easier and support each other. Because we should have a much larger community of folks that are selling into the public sector. There's so much opportunity to both access just this massive market. I mean, $2 trillion at the state and local level every single year that has to be spent, and one that has also just such high impact. Whether you're making school food or helping folks get to work on time, or providing health services, maintaining our fields and rec areas. There's just so much need and good out there to be done. So yeah, really excited, and thank you for supporting this kind of growing community of businesses that are really excited and curious to be serving the market. You're not alone, although your friends and family might look at you and be like, you're a little crazy, but it's a good crazy.
Thank you so much for that. And again, everyone, I already dropped the links to create your account, create your supplier profile in Pavilion's platform. I don't know if y'all heard, but basically this is going to revolutionize the way that agencies are going after these opportunities, and finding and sourcing businesses. And I think on the website as well, they had an article about piggybacking language, but also the shareable contracting language. So go there, check out their resources, create your profile, test the website, see what type of opportunities are available. Can businesses search other businesses as well to partner on some opportunities? Or
yeah, that is one thing. So a lot of businesses also are maybe not directly awarded government business yet. You haven't been directly awarded an RFP, or won a contract yet. But we do know that many businesses out there still sell to government through a prime. They're a subcontractor, they're a reseller, they're a distributor. So if you also typically subcontract or resell, or serve as a distribution partner for a business that has been directly awarded a contract that is shareable, we can also get your business set up. One thing we have heard is this desire to do better matchmaking between folks that have larger companies that have been directly awarded business and smaller, more local, diverse businesses as well. We don't have a great way to serve that today on the platform, but it's on our radar, and it's certainly on our longer term roadmap.
definitely keep me posted with that, and however I can provide some support in that area. And we did have someone, Jonathan, said this is a great concept. Thank you so much, Mariel. And Shannon said thank you as well. So yeah, I'm saying thank you because again, this has always been something that is, we've had the conversation about it, but to also see the journey to where you are now and a lot of the work that you're adding onto the plate. Awesome. So congratulations. And that's it. Everyone, go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and share this video to at least 5 people who need to hear this information. Don't be stingy. It's 2023, y'all. All right. So we'll catch you all in the next episode. Thank you again, Mariel.
Thank you so much. Yeah, really appreciate the opportunity to get the word out.
All right. Have a good day, y'all.